Hey everyone, and welcome to another episode of the May Lee Show. Glad to have you here. For those of you who are regular listeners and watchers of the show, thanks for joining again. Always appreciate your support. And for those of you who are watching or listening for the first time, welcome to the show. I'm so glad you're tuning in, and I hopefully you'll become a regular listener or follower. That would be awesome. So we have a really great episode coming up today. I pre-recorded this, but my guest is Bowen Yang, the fabulously talented comedian, actor, podcaster. The guy's on fire, and so this my conversation with him was really, really great in many ways. And I'm not just saying that. Usually when you think of comedians, a lot of people just assume, oh, they're just going to constantly be funny. They're always on and they always have a joke to tell, which can be the case. However, oftentimes they're quite serious. They're cerebral. They're intellectual. They have a lot of deep thoughts and they don't want to always be on. And what I love about this conversation I had with Bowen is that I learned that Bowen he's a very deep thinker. He is an intellect. He's very thoughtful. He's insightful. Um, he's super smart. So I had such a wonderful conversation with him about everything from his childhood background. He was born in Australia. And then the fact that he obviously discovered he was gay and that transformation that took place when he wanted to come out and he did, and how his family handled it and how that has affected his career and his identity. So we talked about all sorts of things beyond that, but it really was one of those conversations where I was like, wow, this was so beyond what I expected in the most amazing way. So you guys are going to thoroughly enjoy this interview. But before we get to it, I just want to touch on a couple of things here. One is that I just want you all to take a moment, if you could, to send your thoughts, prayers, good vibes, positivity, whatever you want to call it, to all those who are being affected by the wildfires in Washington State, Oregon, and here in California. It's been a nightmare. It's been a total nightmare for so many people. The firefighters are amazing heroes, as we know, but please understand, I've covered these wildfires in the past as a journalist, and what I always notice is the dedication of these firefighters. They go without sleep for days. They go without seeing their families. They often sometimes their own hometowns or houses are affected by the fires, and yet they stay on the front lines. So, they are superheroes. So I want you all to please just take a moment to think about all those affected, because it is a major, major catastrophe, and it's heartbreaking, and it's climate change. And we have a lot of climate deniers, including the guy in the White House. But it's real. It's science, and the proof is there. And we need to face the music and do something about it and be dead serious about it, no matter what the president says, and his continued denial of it, telling us that we need to rake the forests. Whatever, dude. Okay, and then some other stories. You guys probably notice on my Instagram, if you follow me on Instagram, the May Lee Show, I had posted about this guy, Jeffrey Previtt. He's the CEO here in Los Angeles who was caught on videotape abusing his dog, Beachy. And he is seen lifting up the dog by the neck and choking it and then slapping it around a few times. And apparently he did it because the dog had peed on the rug. So it was so horrific that people absolutely went ballistic, including me, because as you know, I am a huge animal lover and dog lover. And whenever I see this kind of animal abuse, it breaks me. I have no tolerance for that. I have no tolerance for that, and I have no tolerance for child abuse. Those are two things that people are scum of the earth who do that. So apparently this Jeffrey Previtt has apologized, saying that his actions took unreasonable and unjustifiable action against his dog. He has placed it with another family member, thank God. So he no longer has the dog in his possession. And he said he admitted he's an imperfect person. No shit, dude. And so apparently, though, he still might be in trouble, I'm hoping, because the police are still investigating this case of alleged animal abuse. And so he could be fined or, possibly even worse. We'll have to follow that and see what happens. Apparently his brother had said that he is in anger management class, this guy, Jeffrey Previtt. So he's taking a break from his company. And the brother said that his brother's kind-hearted and deeply cares for the dog. Really? Could have fooled me. So that's the Jeffrey Previtt update. Well, interestingly, when I started posting this, a friend of mine says to me, "Oh my God, I went out on a couple of dates with this guy." She apparently had met him, I think online. So she went out on a couple of dates and I said, "So what was he like?" And she said, "Well, yeah, he was kind of a douchebag because when I asked when he moved into his new condo, which is where all this happened, how was it? Did he like where he lived? Had he met any of his neighbors?" Apparently he answered her and said, "No, I don't really want to meet any neighbors. I don't care about them." So no surprise. Jerk. Douchebag. Okay, so that's the Jeffrey Previtt story. The other story that had been going viral was about this guy in Newport Beach who had gone up to Sophia Chang, who is a social media influencer, and her sister having lunch at the Blue Water Grill in Newport Beach. And this guy, this racist Kevin, apparently on his way to the bathroom, stops at their table and says, "Go back to Wuhan." So on the way back, Sophia and her sister stop him and ask him, "Why did you say that?" And he says to them, I don't speak Chinese. I don't know what you're talking about." So full on overt racist, like not even trying to hide it, right? So apparently the restaurant, tried to talk to him and it took him 10 minutes to leave because he was just paying the bill. So it's not like he really got kicked out. So Sophia, posted this and then it went viral, and Jackfruit and Cute Karen's, two Instagram accounts, they found out who he was, or somebody did, at least their followers, somebody found out who he was. His name is James Hilbrandt of Orange County. James Hilbrandt. So, James, you've been caught and you've been named. So, let the games begin. Warriors, if you want to go after him, that's fine by me too. But I think a lot of people are already going after him. I'm sure he's canceled all his social media accounts and, LinkedIn, all that. But his name is James Hilbrandt, Hilbrant. Apparently, Blue Water Grill put out a statement about this incident and said, they don't tolerate any of this and they will never allow this patron to come back to the restaurant. Let's see about that too. But this is what happens, guys. I think our community and those who support the community, the Asian American community, are ready to pounce. Our level of tolerance is zero now. It's absolutely zero. So the power of our community and the power of action and coming together in support is pretty incredible. Cannot be denied. No longer is anyone remaining silent. No longer is anyone willing to just take this shit. We are ready to jump. We are ready to show support, and we are ready to call it out. So hopefully as these things continue happening, I have no sympathy for these people and for them to be humiliated, because they should be responsible for their actions. And, these people have been getting away with it forever. Think about it, forever. And they have been emboldened by that fact that they've been able to get away with this kind of behavior forever, but no longer. And so I hope this sends, each time it happens, I hope it sends a very clear message that you continue to do this, well, we're going to come after you, right? All right, so let's get to the good stuff. My interview with Bowen Yang. Like I said, he's incredible. He's smart. He's funny. He's talented. And he's just getting going, which is the most amazing thing. So here is my interview with Bowen Yang. Hey, Bowen, welcome to the show. I'm so excited to have you here.
I'm very excited to be here. This is huge. I feel like I've stepped into my phone or my YouTube. It's this is wonderful.
I mean, look, I feel the same way because you have a hugely popular podcast and you're on SNL and you're on Nora from Queens. I mean, you're like on fire, dude.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah.
Thanks. That means a
Yes.
lot.
No, it's exciting to me when I see Asian talent, rising up that ladder and doing really well and being themselves and, representation in all ways. So definitely
Sure.
so proud of you, Bowen.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Maylee.
Yeah.
That means a lot. I feel like you have such a first name, last name that just rolls off the tongue. So I've
I
just
do.
like referred to you in my own mind as Maylee. It's the Maylee show.
Yeah,
And so
yeah.
I'm just like,
Well,
it's
that
Maylee.
that part is okay, but I did grow up my entire life into my adulthood with people thinking Mei Lee was my first name.
Of course.
And when I started getting sassier, I'm like, what do you think I am, Madonna or something, or Cher? No, I don't have just one name. It's both my names, Mei Lee.
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah.
Oh, but how great would it be if like you took on the May mononym, just full stop? Like your first name is May.
Yeah.
You are only accepting being referred to as May.
I mean, Bowen. I mean, like that's like being like Oprah or something. That'd be awesome.
I think you're there or you're on your way. Whatever you want to be at, it's there.
Well, I'm trying. I'm Asian Oprah, maybe that has a nice ring to it. And I have actually been referred to the Asian Oprah when I was doing a talk show in Asia. Yeah, I know. And that was a tall order. And I think that kind of messed me up. I got to be honest.
Just in terms of what, like the
Pressure. Too much pressure.
Sure, but I mean it can disappear and then you can sort of like rise above it and penetrate. I feel like you're on your way. I discovered you in a very like critical moment, I think, where
Did you?
it was after the Benny Law interview, and then you had gone Connie Woon, Dr. Connie Woon.
Yep.
Um and that was like a very sort of crisisy moment for all of us, obviously.
Yeah.
But for me, I was just like, oh God, like I don't know what to do about this moment, this xenophobic moment in our culture.
Yeah.
And hearing the two of you talk about how there's this history of resistance, there's a history of solidarity in our communities, like just kind of like it cracked it all open for me, honestly. So
Oh,
anyway, and not
God.
to like fanboy too much on you up top, but that's
No,
that's
no,
how
no, no. That means a lot to me because I thought that show with Connie was great because she is a very bold, honest, outspoken person as well when it comes to race relations and the need for solidarity and the need to really be honest with ourselves about our own biases and all
Yes.
our own racism. And I thought it was such a powerful show. So I'm so glad that impacted you in that way. That means a lot, actually.
Sure,
Yeah.
for sure.
Well, good. I'm so glad you did. So this is how I discovered you. I mean, obviously I already knew who you were, but one day I happened to see that you liked something on the Instagram, Maylee Show Instagram. I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
oh my God, Bowen Yang follows the show. That's so great. So I reached out thinking he's probably way too busy to come on the show, but I just decided I'm going to ping him anyway and ask him. And you immediately responded, which was so sweet.
Well, you're leaving out a lot of context, May, because I did not get back to you for like a solid like 4 days after I had replied or you had replied back, and I was
Yeah.
like, oh God, she thinks I'm like some space cadet who.
Oh,
like,
that's
can't
right.
even-
You didn't respond in the beginning. That's right. You did. I totally forgot about that.
Anyway, I'm
Oh,
owning
man.
up to that.
Okay. I was going to do revisionist history for your sake, but okay. You just owned up to it. All right.
Yeah,
Anyway, well, here you are. And I like, I have so much to talk to you about and ask you about. And what I love about being a journalist, I've been doing this for so long, is you learn so much more about somebody when you're about to interview them because you do a lot of research. And I had no idea you were born in Australia.
That's right. I was a little Brisbane baby, but then we moved away when I was 6 months.
Oh, so you don't remember anything about Australia?
Not really. And then we finally went back, I think like 2 years ago.
Okay.
And it was lovely. And Australia is its own interesting kind of place too.
It is. It definitely
Yeah.
is. Yeah. I mean, it's
Right.
beautiful. It's
Yeah.
diverse for sure.
Yes.
Okay, here I'll give you a little tidbit about my connection to Australia. I
Please.
almost married an Australian.
A surfer. No, I'm just kidding.
No, 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 no. But let's just put it this way: I dodged an enormous bullet.
I can see that. I believe that. No,
Yeah,
I believe it from
yeah,
you.
yeah. So I have an interesting relationship with Australia, good and bad.
I mean, were you there a lot?
I went there pretty frequently for both work and play when I
Sure,
lived in
sure.
Asia.
Right.
So I've been there a few times and spent some time there. Yeah, yeah.
It's just Australia I find to be very interesting in terms of, I mean, let's just say it is this repository for white supremacy on that hemisphere, you know?
Yes.
Does that make
Yes.
sense?
Oh, completely, Bowen.
Like
Yes.
I didn't like it was this thing where like I didn't really know. I learned more about my parents when we all visited, when we all went back a couple years ago just to like it was just a vacation basically. And it was just this thing where I was like, oh, this is where my parents first experienced white supremacy. You know, it's like this
Oh,
is the place, and it's so pronounced there,
that
um,
is. It is. People
specifically
don't know
towards
that.
Asians.
People don't know that outside of Asia and Australia, really. Americans certainly don't know that.
Of course.
Yeah.
So, you know, and there's obviously um, so many other sort of social things that are happening there that that feed into white supremacy that don't really have anything to do with Asian people. But in terms of the specific Asian experience of being in Australia,
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of the coverage of the COVID xenophobia was kind of there are a lot of these Australian stories where, gosh, you have these like teenagers just losing their mind, these white teenagers losing their minds. I mean, this is so heavy to start on, but
Yeah.
anyway, I mean,
No, it's true.
Australia, yeah,
Yeah.
but I track like Australia as like this origin place for me in this very sort of interesting way where it's like I have no memory of it, but I have this like I have these threads that are connected to what that place is like for my parents, for my immediate family, and for my community. You know, it's like it's
Right.
interesting. Yeah.
No, no. I mean, you were born there, so that's already it's a thread. It's a pretty strong thread.
Sure,
Yeah.
sure.
But anyway, okay. So that's Australia. I didn't mean to bring it up and bring up like the almost getting married and then getting into the heavy stuff, but that's okay. That's okay.
No, that's okay.
I
Yeah,
think
yeah,
this
yeah.
conversation is going to go every which way anyway. Okay. So
Yeah.
you were born in Australia, but then you guys moved to Canada,
That's right.
right? And then
Uh-huh.
how long were you in Canada?
Canada, I was there until I was 8. I was 8 years old.
Okay.
So then 8 years old, we moved to, and then after that, we moved to the U.S. Where we moved to Colorado,
Colorado.
Denver.
Right.
So anytime someone asks me where I'm from, or they used to, anytime people would ask me where I was from, I used to like sort of bifurcate my childhood and be like, well, I grew up in Canada, but then I also spent the rest of my adolescence in Colorado. And I don't now I look back on that and I'm just like, oh, I should have just said I was from Colorado, you know, like it doesn't really matter. But
But you know what? I think it does, Bowen. I think it does to kind of show that, we come from such different backgrounds and we have different experiences. I mean, I
sure.
think it's important to say that you're more international sometimes and you have like a different perspective, a worldview.
Yeah.
So I always say, yeah, I was born in Ohio, but then my parents moved back to Korea for a few years, and then we
Right.
moved back to the States again, and we moved around. I mean, because I want to give people an idea that no, I didn't just spend all my life in Ohio until I left for school. You know what I mean?
Sure.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, there is like some like cultural thing to giving just like just a zero dimensional answer in that it's just like a point in your timeline where like I grew up in like you would probably be conditioned to say that, oh, I'm from Ohio, but that's not even the full sort of story, you know?
No, and
Yeah, yeah.
I don't really want to say I'm from Ohio.
What do you
I,
mean?
I,
Cleveland?
I'm sure people in Ohio right now are going to get offended. I'm so sorry. It was just an interesting, challenging experience. And I've talked about this before.
Sure.
Growing up as an Asian kid in the 70s in Ohio, it just was not easy. So,
Yeah, yeah,
let's
yeah.
just be honest. So, anyway,
Oh,
so then you grew up in Colorado, and I know that's when you kind of discovered the arts, and people were like looking at you as, oh gosh, you might, you have some talent here. And I thought it was great that you in your high school yearbook In 2008, you were voted most likely to be a cast member
Oh
on
yeah.
Saturday Night Live. That's
Uh-huh.
crazy.
Well, that was just like it was just like a very embellished way of saying like this is the goofiest class. It's class clown. I mean, it was just they like sort of like spun the titles. I mean, instead of like prettiest person,
Uh,
they and for the senior superlatives, they said, most likely to be on the cover of Vogue. Like, it was just like
right, right.
they would like work in these like, entry points into the culture, but like kind of circumvent having to say, this is the prettiest person, this is the funniest person, this is the smartest person. So I basically ended up with funniest person, which was a huge honor.
Well,
Much love to the class of 2008 at Smoky Hill High School.
right,
Um,
right. But I mean, it
but
was like prophetic. I mean, the fact that they said Saturday Night Live at that point back then,
uh-huh,
did
uh-huh.
you
Yeah,
even
sure.
envision, did you even think about being a comedian?
I thought about being a comedian, so I was on the like really cute, really innocent high school improv team back then, and we would do the shows in the cafeteria, and then we would go downtown on Monday nights, and what we're like these 16-year-olds doing improv in these like basement theaters in downtown Denver, thinking we were so fucking cool. And it was kind of just cheesy and corny, but no, like I mean, I kind of really sort of discovered this lane of comedy because I had this wonderful teacher who was my calculus teacher and my epistemology teacher, and he was the co-director of this improv theater downtown, this professional improv theater downtown.
Wow.
And I'm still very good friends with him today. But he sort of like broke that open for me, and I went to this like pretty like diverse public school where I had, everyone just sort of had like kind of sedimented down to whatever place they could
Okay.
find. And like for me, it was just like, oh, drama club. And even drama club was like, we don't know where to put this Asian guy into this like play about, the wild, wild west. So, well, I mean, they weren't gonna like make me like, like a railroad worker or
Right.
whatever. But so
Okay.
then
That's good. Okay.
and I didn't want to do that. So I was just like, I'm gonna actually just do this thing where I get to make up what I do. And then that was the
Wow.
lane.
Oh
Yeah.
my God. So your teacher, that this guy must have been, he must be so proud of you.
Yeah, I mean, I remember when I first got moved to the cast, they like went straight to all the news outlets in Colorado, like went straight to him just to like get
Oh,
his sort of perspective on it. So it's nice. It felt very full circle.
yeah. Okay. So,
Yeah.
so you did know that you had this quality and some talent in this area, but
Sure.
did you think that you were going to pursue it? Because I know that your parents, just like most Asian parents,
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
conservative, they want you to kind of do the conservative thing.
Right.
And I know your mom was an OBGYN, your father was a mine explosives expert or something like that.
That's right.
Please
Yes.
explain. I don't know what that is.
He's an explosives engineer for these like industrial mining projects that happen throughout the world.
Okay.
So
Okay.
he just goes to quarries and he just like looks at maps and he's just like, we put them here and here and here, and then they
And just
blow up.
blow shit up. Okay.
Yeah,
That kind
yeah,
of sounds fun actually.
yeah.
Okay. So, but they are your typical Asian parents who
Uh-huh.
probably wanted their kids to just kind of pursue a safe and conservative path.
Sure. I mean,
Yeah.
and it was all based on what they were familiar with,
Right.
which were these STEM jobs and the way that um things filtered through like some educational class aspiration, among the other Chinese parents
Yeah.
in the greater Denver metro area was, to be like, well, our kid got, this much on his SATs and he's going to apply to, these schools. So I mean, it's that sort of East Asian kind
Totally.
of
Yeah.
diaspora thing. Yeah.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. I get it. I get it. And I was not, believe it or not, I was not academically inclined.
Neither
In
was I.
Yeah, I mean, I had to work at it. I wasn't
Uh-huh.
naturally book smart for sure.
Right. Right.
Except in the subjects that I really enjoyed, which was like writing,
Uh-huh.
and and public speaking, things like that. But math, science, the basics, no. And
Sure.
SATs were a fucking nightmare for me. I had to take tutoring, and it still didn't help me.
I mean, but like do we is that like a measure of like any of our self-worth at this point? Like,
No, no.
isn't it the saddest person? Isn't it the saddest thing in the world when like some middle-aged person is like, well, I scored at this on my ACT. I'm like, babe, let it go. You know?
That is so true. That is so true. But
Right.
back then, unfortunately, that's how, that was the gauge, right?
Sure,
And
sure,
especially
totally.
in Asian culture, because that determined what school you would get into and the Ivy Leagues
Yes.
and blah, blah, blah. So, yeah.
Right.
And you and I have something in common.
We do?
I was pre-med as well.
Got it. Okay, so then you took it all the way. What
I
happened?
mean, Bowen, I struggled through high school and then
Mm,
freshman year in college with math and science classes. I
yeah.
couldn't do it to save my life. I was literally, I was barking up the wrong tree.
Sure.
Totally.
Yeah.
But because of that programming, the Asian programming of like, no,
Mhm.
I need to be a doctor because that's what I should be doing. I
Right,
struggled.
right.
And finally I was like, oh, fuck this. I can't do it. Can't do
But
it.
you like disengaged from that during undergrad. Is that fair to
Correct.
say? Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay,
Oh
cool.
yeah. Yeah.
Great.
And so did you. No, you
No,
no,
I
you had
graduated with yeah.
microbiology, right?
It was chemistry. I don't know. Like the Wikipedia reporting is whack right now because
Oh, is it not?
for some reason on the Wikipedia page it says microbiology. I'm like, where does it say that? Like, we're like, what are they citing? You know? So no, it was chemistry.
Oh, it's
But I mean,
chemistry.
to the greater population, it's like, oh, sure, it's like a science degree. But
No,
yeah, it was
I was traumatized by chemistry. I almost failed chemistry in high school and almost didn't graduate because of chemistry.
because and then you were gonna dive headfirst into pre-med.
I
Yeah.
mean, what the hell was I thinking, right? But again, that goes to show the intense programming all my life.
Right. And that programming works to such an extent that you would think I'm bad at this thing, but I'm going to pursue it
Right.
anyway.
Right. Which is
Like that's
crazy.
fucked up. Yeah, yeah,
It's
yeah.
and it still happens. I still see it
Of
with
course.
young people, who feel this pressure to be something that they don't want to be, and yet they go ahead and try anyway because
Sure.
that's just the way it's supposed to be.
Sure,
So
sure.
yeah, so it takes a lot of deprogramming and it takes stubbornness. You and I think are two examples of Asian kids who just finally said, screw this. This is not me
Right, right.
in
Totally.
many different ways. I mean, so Bowen, I mean, which segues into, the fact that at 17, okay, let's backtrack.
Yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
read, and maybe the Wikipedia and other articles were wrong, so you correct me.
Okay.
You discovered at 5 that your sexuality and your sexual orientation.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, that's right.
It was not a discovery. It was just like the indicators first started to sort of come to the surface where, growing up in Montreal when we were back in Canada, Celine Dion was this deity, and then she would come on TV, and then I would light up and dance and sing and like take my clothes off. I was just like,
Oh my God, you loved it. Wow.
and my parents were like, "What is going on? This kid." But honestly, like being in Montreal and worshiping Celine Dion, like was not like this. It was not a queer sensibility. It was just this universal. Like
Everybody loved her, right?
everybody loved her, no
Yeah.
matter what your age was, no matter what your whatever was. Like, everybody loved her. But these were like the first sort of flags
Okay.
that popped up, and then high school became this inflection point, and then senior year sort of didn't even come out on my own terms, but my parents sort of discovered this secondhand, and then just put me in this conversion therapy
Which
program.
is fascinating that you
Sure.
went through that. Yeah.
Yeah. But this is, I mean, it's taken a long time and it's taken a lot of work to arrive at this place of understanding between me and my parents, and we're still sort of kind of along for the journey
Okay.
right now. But I mean, I couple that with the pre-med sort of programming because it was just this thing of like, well, this is just to say that I don't resent them for like kind of like wanting to be so solutions oriented in their immigrant sort of
Yeah. No,
gumption.
I get it. Yeah.
To be like, okay, we see this as a problem. How are we going to solve this?
Right.
And the solution was this kind of therapy.
Yeah.
And so for them, it was just this unfamiliar thing. The way that the arts were unfamiliar to them, and it's given it's and I appreciate the perspective that it gives me even now, where my dad just doesn't care for Western media at all, and he's just like, oh, like, great, like you're on a TV, like he like nothing's really changed in the fundamentals of the way my parents and I sort of like relate to each other, even after things have sort of changed in my life.
Right.
But the conversion therapy aspect was this thing of me coming home every day to see my parents sobbing, and I had never seen my dad cry before until now. It was just, and it was every single day.
Oh,
And so
wow.
I, and so you're sort of like duty bound in this,
Yeah.
you know,
It's
Asian diaspora way.
filial piety. That's
Yes,
the
absolutely.
that's what it
Yeah.
is. And we all
Yep.
we all know it because we all lived it. And we still
Sure.
live it. I mean, I still live it with my father has passed away, but I still live it with my mom,
Right. Of course.
you
Of
know?
course.
So yeah, so I mean, I think every Asian probably completely understands what you went through and the idea that this is all your parents knew. So you can't really
Totally.
blame them in many ways.
I can't blame them for the scope, for their scope not sort of being wider, because what would have given them the opportunity to
Exactly.
expand?
Exactly. Exactly.
So, went through with that, and then ended up at NYU because my sister was already attending there. She was already a junior. She was a rising junior by the time I had to decide between UCLA and NYU. And
Okay.
I had gotten into UCLA as an out of state Asian, and I was like
Wow.
I was like, this never happens. Like
Right, exactly.
at the UC is like, I want to go to UCLA so badly. Um, and but then we decided to go with NYU because in a way my sister was kind of mediating both sides of me and my parents.
Ah,
So she was kind of put in the position to chaperone, as it were.
okay.
So I
Okay.
moved in with her, but so I went to NYU and moved in with her, did not stay in the dorms. She was kind of babysitting me. Um,
Wow.
and she was, I mean, but we had a very like harmonious roommate relationship, and she and we got along great. And then anytime we would go home for Thanksgiving or Christmas, we would get into fights because the staging of the parents being around you and like your childhood bedroom, as it was just like
You would regress. It was like
the
a
regression
regression.
was
Yeah, totally.
totally.
Yes. I'm like that with my older brother.
But it's crazy. It's fascinating that the regression happens, um, even when you and the other person are like out of that context.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Like it's just the environment that is regressive.
I think because you're back in that space of
Yeah.
parent, child, sibling, that kind of hierarchy.
Right.
So yeah, no, I get that too. What was your sister cool though? I mean, was she understanding more about what was happening to you and like what you were going through?
She was, but she was also trying to straddle the line between, and she was put in the very unenviable position of having to like kind of be the spokesperson for both sides.
Oh man. Okay.
Um, which I think like in terms of the breakdown of this is like I still can't even tell if it's like this binary thing of like there's a right side and a wrong side, or there's a side that is um better or worse. I mean, she had a really tough sort of thing to do where she had
Yeah.
to sort of thread the spaces between where I didn't see eye to eye with my parents, and they couldn't understand, like begin to understand
Yeah.
what it meant to be homosexual. So,
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. Because even to this day, Bowen, as you know, uh, Asian young people, especially, even if they wanted to come out, they really feel
mhm,
like they can't, or
right.
they're so afraid because because of the tradition of family and parents and things like that. So that
Hmm.
breaks my heart because I will say that I believe I have a family member who is and has been, and I kind of knew it from very young age, and he will never, he will never,
Uh,
no, he will never.
that's
It's
heartbreaking.
it's it's so heartbreaking to me. I mean, I get teared up because I just feel like, wow, he could have such a freer, more open, authentic life, and
Hmm. Hmm.
just can't, absolutely cannot.
Sure. And but
Yeah.
even like the freedom and the openness and the authenticity that like is conferred upon you for sort of living your truth or what have you is like it's not even this it's not like a recklessness or it's not like an energy.
No.
It's just like you're just grounded in yourself. It's
Right.
just it's less volatile to sort of go down that path. But why do you think I mean you don't have to get too into it, but like why do you think he
Oh,
would never?
his parents would. I mean,
Hmm.
and I'm dead serious.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
It's that severe that I just know that it would be impossible. It would be
Hmm.
impossible. And I've thought about ways of like me, trying to help, but I'm like, oh man, that would just be a powder keg that I probably don't want to get into. But I think about it on and off, and I just
Of
think, geez,
course.
this is so bad. And I've tried to talk to other like relatives, that I thought
Hmm.
maybe would, understand, and they kind of shut down too, because they know that
Ooh.
such an impossible thing that it just don't even go there kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I bring this up only because, since you've been through it and, I want listeners who may be out there and viewers who are going through this is like, of course it's worth it at the end of the day. There's
Hmm.
going to be struggle, there's going to be pain. And I think it's that initial fear of hurting, and breaking the hearts of parents and relatives and loved
Sure.
ones, and I think that's probably, is that the biggest obstacle for coming out?
I would, gosh, coming out as this thing that is a universal experience in some way in terms of uh, a queer experience, but it's, I mean, that's where the universality stops, and then from there, it gets so specific and
Yeah.
nuanced, and it's kind of just impossible to generalize. But then, I mean, for my experience, it was a parental thing. It was a cultural thing. It was the filial piety where my dad was telling me, well, I'm the oldest son from your grandparents, and in Han culture, in Chinese culture, it's the son of the firstborn who
Mm,
has to sort of like take kind of take the baton and run with this bloodline.
right.
And that really like screwed with me. And then the other thing that screwed with me too was I'm the second child. um my mom used to remind me, she doesn't do this as much anymore, but she used to remind me, you know if your father and I had stayed in China, or if we had moved back after your sister was born in Australia, um we wouldn't have been able to have you, like with the one
Right.
child law
That's right.
policy.
Right.
So then that kind of always like throttled me into this
God.
existential like thing of like, wait, like what am I,
Oh man. That's
like am
heavy.
I, it's so heavy. But anyway, this is all to say that there are these crazy things that sort of, I don't know, like paralyze anybody who has to go through this. And I mean, yeah, like I think the way that I've sort of thought around this issue is that is just investing in community and finding community first, so that that becomes its own safety net for you in this
Mm,
individualized experience of coming out and not knowing how to navigate it. Because at the very least, you will have people
yeah.
um, present, and you will have people who can be a resource.
Right. Right.
And it's this notion of like chosen family, obviously, but it's also this notion of just kind of setting that up early on, even
Mm,
if you feel like you're in an untenable situation with your immediate loved ones,
right.
but just having that at the ready, on standby in case things end up being very dire.
Right. And not being completely alone because you're not. I mean,
No,
if you
no,
look around,
right.
you're not. Yeah. Yeah.
Yep.
I would imagine though, probably a lot of younger people have reached out to you. And maybe several, I mean, a lot of Asian kids. I don't know. I mean, has that happened?
Uh-huh. Yeah, I did a talk at a virtual talk at through Virginia Tech the other day.
Oh,
Yeah, and it
okay.
was lovely. I spoke with I think it was their president of the APITA association there, and then there was this breakout sort of room where I got to sort of be on this big Zoom grid with a bunch of folks from both the APITA group there and the LGBTQ groups there. And then it was nice. And there was this one kid who is like the class president of the sophomores, and he's just this like he was just this like bright, peppy kid. He was like, thank you so much for coming, and it was just so cool to see you on TV. And it was just like it was kind of adorable. But this was like the big sort of thing that we all talked about was you know, figuring out your support systems ahead of time, before you before you sort of want to strike out on your own in terms of being okay and being safe if the worst case scenario were to come true.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. But I mean, yeah, I mean, like, but honestly, and not to bring it back to you, but like after the Connie One interview that you had, I mean, I sort of put this thing out on my socials where I was just like, look, like this is a really dark time for us, and so. But I was like, I think there's power in us feeling something collectively, in us feeling something deeply and collectively, even if it has nothing to do with your identities on paper.
Yep.
And even though there's no great way to think about the Asian community as monolith, we can still like create the solidarity network, even with people who have nothing in common with you. You can create this network, and we're on the back heel, but there's power in experiencing something together.
Yes.
And I just think that's a good general principle for, I mean, any sort of thing.
Look, Black Lives Matter obviously is a much bigger movement that is bringing everyone together in solidarity. Yes. But with xenophobia, I feel like the silver lining with COVID, I think there are a couple of silver linings, but one is that it has woken up the Asian community to the fact that this is the treatment that we get. We're good. We're the model minorities until we're not, until we all of a sudden are turned into the enemy and the foreigner and the outsider. And so this is a moment where we need to say, okay, this is very deep and we need to come together and finally stand up and say, yeah, no, this is not happening anymore. We're not going to take this shit anymore.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
For sure. And even like, and there've been multiple moments since the pandemic where I think we've all sort of sprung into action as a community over things that I think we're immediately banding together and saying that this is unacceptable. I mean, a couple weeks ago with the Justice Department sort of decision around just affirmative action and just an Asian students and kids being used as these props.
Right. Yeah. All of a sudden, they were just making this decision, but because of the pressure, they reversed the decision immediately.
Yes.
Yeah.
But it's this thing where it's like, oh wait, like if you know, we just have to sort of like form the human chain in our minds. But that was when sort of, you know, I had plenty of folks. I was talking to plenty of folks who were young and queer and Asian, and we all just kind of like took space to just like hear each other in the DMs. But even that, like, kind of parasocially is how we're all like relating to each other now anyway.
It's true. And I mean, it can be such a useful tool, right? Social media to do that outreach and connection. And honestly, I interviewed Mia Kang recently, and she and I were saying, she's like, I've never felt more connected to the Asian community because of social media. And I was like, I totally agree, because I'm now being able to connect and hear from and, you know, exchange ideas with people that I never would have come across, right?
Exactly.
Without social media. Now, there are a lot of assholes on social media, of course, we know that.
Of course.
And I know you've blocked a lot of people because you're like, I can't deal with you.
Well, sure. And I it's a weekly thing at this point that I just deactivate my Twitter. I'm just like, I can't do. I went on Twitter the other day and was just like, I was watching the Looney Tunes, the classic Looney Tunes. And I was just like, man, Looney Tunes are iconic. And then I had people in my replies being like, this isn't news. And I was like,
oh my God,
I can't even enjoy cartoons on Twitter anymore.
Okay, that's lame. Okay, I know, because I've started blocking some people too, because I'm like, I have to say, I mean, I'm an older woman and I should not get involved like this. I should know better. But when I hear from a jerk or like someone spewing some stupid shit, I will respond and I get engaged. And then
Yeah.
after a while, I'm like, I can't do this anymore, and I'll block. And,
Yeah.
I got called out once by somebody saying, oh, look at that. She's filtering and she's blocking. I'm like, no, I'm not. It's just that when it gets out of control, I'm not going
Right.
to give this person the time or space on my page. Sorry.
On your page. No,
Yeah.
totally. And like, I had a friend who framed this in a way that I have found helpful.
Yeah.
Which is that, I mean, you are on social media on your own terms. We're all on social media on our own terms, basically. But this friend was just like, I am not your customer service. I am not like, you are not tweeting at me being like, I got a middle C on your plane, like that's not like, that's not the transaction, I think. Like
It shouldn't be.
by default, it shouldn't be like, you a direct, I don't know. I mean, it's just this thing of like, wait, I mean, it's a boundary setting exercise where we have to be like, I'm going to choose to field this kind of dialogue. And
Right.
sometimes it's productive, sometimes it's frivolous, sometimes it's being called out and accepting that. And if it's a group of people coming to you and being like, you have wronged us, then that's when you listen. But if it's like individual people being like, oh, you're blocking me, it's like, it doesn't matter.
Exactly. Exactly.
Right.
I think Seth Rogen, not too long ago was just getting so annoyed with, the right wingers and the people who was like all lives matter, all that stuff. They were anti BLM.
Right.
And so he just did a video and he's like, you don't like it? Fuck off, get off my page, fuck off. I mean, he was going off,
Right.
But I think that's sometimes how we feel. It's just like, listen, don't spew your shit at me, because you don't like something. But unfortunately there are pros and cons to social media, as we all know. But that's how we found each other. Yay. Anyway, all right, let's get to the fun stuff. So, I mean, even though, look, I love talking about this kind of stuff.
I'm having a blast.
I am too, because you know me, I can be very intense, and I use the show for hopefully informational purposes and to talk about issues that people may not want to address in a very open way that I think that isn't, especially amongst the Asian American community, you don't hear a lot of this kind of bold talk.
I agree.
I think that's why this show is resonating with people, because I'm at the age and I'm a journalist who've been doing this for a long time. So I don't give a shit like what I say. And if people get offended, I'm just going to speak the truth, at least what I think is the truth. So, all right. So for you though, let's talk about SNL, because I mean, groundbreaking, exciting, like everybody was like, oh my God, finally, especially in the Asian community. So for you, I know you started off as a writer.
Yeah.
Right? When you were a writer, were you thinking to yourself, I hope at some point I get a shot of being on the show?
It was such a kind of like a whipsaw thing where the reason I got hired as a writer to begin with was because I had auditioned a few times.
Okay.
To be on the cast, but this is sort of kind of baked into the hiring practices there anyway, where a lot of the writers who would end up there in the whole history of the show would come in, audition, do their stand-up routines, do their characters, whatever it was, whatever their specialty was, whatever their calling card was, and then Lorne Michaels would have this idea of being like, well, they can fit into the voice of the show. And that can be the thing that sort of like kind of adds to the collectivist sensibility of the show. And so I kind of saw it that way. And like I had grown up really being obsessed with it, like really, really granular obsessed with the show. Yeah. And then, so, I just getting the opportunity to audition there. I mean, first of all, I should say that the audition process, the entire time I was like, this isn't going to happen. This is not going to happen. And I never even watched SNL being like, I'm going to be on that show someday. Because I think that is a programmed thing, again, where it's like what Sandra Oh would talk about too, where she's like, she would read the script for Killing Eve and be like, who am I auditioning for?
Right.
And like, she couldn't see herself in the protagonist. Beyond just like a surface level representation thing of like, I don't see myself on screen. It was just this thing of like, there's no model for this. There's no mental model.
If you don't see it, you can't be it. I mean, you know what I mean? I mean, that's how I felt too. Well, I didn't see anyone in the media that was Asian, you know? And so, it makes it much harder to think you can.
Well, it just rules it out. It's not even that it makes it harder. It's that I didn't even, yeah,
couldn't even, you didn't see it. So like, what would you base anything on then?
exactly.
Yeah.
And I went into those auditions being like, they would never ever hire a queer Asian guy to be on camera.
Right.
So I was like, my best shot is to be a writer. My best, most feasible thing,
Okay.
way into this show is to be a writer. And then
Right.
that way I can just sort of like, sprinkle on my like my Asian and my, my queer sensibility dust on
Right.
the whole
Right.
show. I mean, not the whole show, but like starting out, I was like, because the first year you're there, it's pretty, it's sort of a trial by fire, and it's, you're kind of shocked into the culture of that place, which is just everybody is running on fumes and
Wow.
everybody is working so hard. And then and that's kind of what makes it beautiful too, is that, it's this communal goal that everyone's trying to reach.
Right.
But yeah, I had just gone in as a writer. I was just like, I am happy to just be here. I'm happy. My mind was set on just doing a good job as a writer and learning as much as I could in these first couple of years, and then just going from there.
Were there any other Asian writers at the time, or were you the
There
only
was a
one?
there was a guy before me and the year before me, Nimesh Patel, I think was his
Okay.
name. Ooh, let me look that up, and let me just look that up just so I don't. Yeah, okay. So if we don't have to cut around this, but his name is Nimesh Patel. He's a stand-up Indian American. But I think he had left right before I got hired as a
Okay.
writer, so we never crossed paths. But
So,
I mean, I
so
was among some queer writers. Sorry, go ahead.
yeah,
What were you
no, no,
gonna
no.
say?
I was going to say, so there obviously, it wasn't like, a few of you in the
No,
writer's room. It was just the one. So here's,
right.
again, I mean, you just brought this up a minute ago. It's the idea that at least you were there to sprinkle in some, a new perspective, an Asian perspective, a queer perspective, and kind of
Sure,
introduce that into, into that culture, which is what we
sure.
need, in all different areas and all different industries, but especially entertainment media. We need that. We need
Right,
that
right.
fresh perspective.
Totally. And
Yeah.
I feel like SNL is a place where, um, you know, I don't find that it's this place that is consciously like gatekeeping at all times. I think the spaces that are sort of interstitial there that like you can break through. I think they're there, and I think the show, especially um, after this summer, I think the conversations internally have been around just making sure the hiring practices are more equitable and fair, and all these
Right.
great things.
Right. Right.
So yeah, I mean, but I sort of like stood in terms of the queer aspect. I was standing on the shoulders of all these great people who had come before and who are still there.
Yeah.
But the Asian thing was interesting.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
So you were a writer for not even a year, right?
It was one full season.
One full season.
Yeah.
Okay. And
Yep.
then they were like, okay, we want to give you a shot to be a cast member.
Yeah, and I think it was after because I kind of anticipated like, well, maybe when Andrew Yang was popping up
Oh,
in the
right.
primary, I was just like, oh, like who? I wonder who will get to play that. But then I was to play him,
Right.
and then I was preparing myself for another round of screen tests just in case. Like I wasn't ruling it out completely that like they would want to look at me again and then
Yeah.
just throw me in for the debate sketches,
Okay.
best case scenario.
Yeah.
Um, and then the summer happened, and I was shooting Nora from Queens, and I was like, well, I guess it's just not going to happen. And then one day on my way to set to shoot Nora, I just got like, texts from Lauren's office being like, Lauren wants to talk to you for 10 minutes today. Do you have time to come in? I was like, no, I'm on set until like 2 a.m. And they'd be like, really? Like, you can't make anything happen? I was like, no, I'm on set. And then they were like, okay, well, Lauren just wants to call you on the phone. And I was like, okay, well, I am in the middle of these takes.
Look
And
at you playing hard to get with Lauren
no,
Michaels.
I wasn't. I literally was like, I can't leave.
Oh my God.
So basically, I handed my phone to a PA and was just like, hey, if you get a call from this number on my phone, will you please run up to me after they call cut or something? And I was
Okay.
sitting next to Awkwafina. I was sitting next to Nora
Okay.
the whole time, and I was like, I turned to her at one point. I was like, so Lauren wants to call me. And she was like, what do you think that means? And I was like, I don't know. I don't know. And then he called, and then like one of the first people, the first person I told was Awkwafina.
Oh my
And
God.
it was a full circle thing because the summer before I got hired to write at SNL, I'm like scrambling the timeline. I'm sorry.
No,
But the summer before I got hired to write at SNL, we'd shot the pilot for Nora from Queens.
oh,
And that was just such an incredible experience. Just having
that
all these Asian
show
people.
is freaking awesome.
It's goofy and silly. It's
Oh my
like,
God.
you
No, I
know,
love it. The
it's fun.
cast is amazing. Like everyone on the cast is so damn funny and so
Now,
talented.
Lori Tanchin, how
Oh,
about her?
no, no,
She's
no.
incredible.
I love her.
She's amazing.
She is so funny.
And she's been paying her dues like for such a long
She
time.
has,
And
right? She's been around
yeah,
for a long time.
she was I mean she was in M Butterfly with BD Wong and
Oh my God.
uh
I don't remember that. Wow.
yeah,
Oh my God. She's
but like
so damn funny.
so damn funny. And just like a classic like New Yorker like actorly actor who now like finally like has like, you know, like this role that is so perfect for her. And then she and Nora have such a good chemistry and like and you know, Nora's real grandma would come on set on certain days, and then the two
Oh,
of them, like TV grandma and real grandma, would just like
no
sit in the
way.
corner and like shoot the shit. It was
Okay,
just
that's
lovely.
you can tell when you watch the show, and then I watch some outtakes too. You can tell that you guys have so much fun.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
sure.
So
And yeah.
no, please finish.
I was just gonna say it's just so special. It was just so special shooting that pilot even, and to have like these like Asian people at the top of the call sheet.
Yeah.
Never. I mean, it doesn't never happen, but like, and we shot the pilot right before Crazy Rich Asians came out. I think,
Oh, really?
or right. It was around the same time. So this was summer of um 2018. Yeah,
Okay.
summer of 2018.
Yeah, then yeah, that's right
Yeah.
around the time that Crazy Rich Asians was about to come out. Yeah.
So it was just, I mean, there was just the groundswell of stuff happening where I felt like, oh, wow, like what a special time.
Yeah.
And then we were on set, we're eating at this restaurant and we're eating in the scene. And then BD and Nora and Lori are all telling me, oh, don't actually eat the food because you're going to have to do that for every single take.
Yeah.
And you're just going to get full and full. And I was like, oh, okay, then how do you guys do this? They're like, okay, just call for a spit bucket and be like, can we get a spit bucket, please? And then you just spit. And I didn't know any of this. And I was learning. I was getting this master class from these three like intergenerational like
Wow.
I. And I was just like, oh, this is special. And then like in between takes, we were talking about like wood ears, like Asian cooking staples, and I was just like, oh, this never happens because I've always had to like sort of implicitly explain myself on any other set.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
just mostly populated by white people, or the
Yeah.
talent is mostly white, where I'm just like, oh, there's just a gap in sort of experience here that I don't really care to
That's so
bridge.
interesting. So
And
you
this was,
felt like at home. You felt
yeah,
comfortable because everybody knew your background, your culture. There was no explaining anything. Yeah.
no,
There is a difference, isn't there? God, that's so
totally.
interesting. Yeah.
It was just emotional for me. And so then I got hired to write at SNL right after we shot the pilot. And then Nora hosted the second episode, the second show.
Oh, yeah.
And it was just, and then I helped, I got to help write her monologue jokes. I wrote a sketch for her that didn't make it. I mean, it was my second week there and you're just getting used to like how the place works and whatever. But I wrote a sketch for her where she was playing like an anime Wong type. Like old Hollywood actress
Yeah.
who was only positioned as like a sexual object for Jewish men. You know, like, and it just didn't make it because it was
Oh
just too
no.
specific.
Oh
Um,
shoot.
but it was also my second week, and I like didn't really know. Like, I mean, there's such a specific language to how things get written there, and I was
Yeah.
still sort of acclimating to that. But anyway, that was that. I mean, that was the journey. It started with sort of Nora being there, and Nora sort of like giving me this opportunity, and then and then when Sandra Oh hosted, that was this other thing where I was like, oh, okay, like something like, you know, there's just stuff happening.
Something happening. Yep. Yep.
And then I got thrown into a sketch with Sandra, where I played Kim Jong Un, and she was my translator.
I remember seeing that. Hilarious.
So fun, and she was like, and then I helped write for her during the Golden Globes when she hosted, and it was just
Oh, you
that year
did?
was the confluence of all these things.
Wow.
that I think like mentally got me into a good place to like not hopefully not go crazy my first, season at SNL as on cast.
Wait, so let's talk about the moment when Lauren called you. So he told you, "I
Uh-huh.
want you to be a cast member," on the phone.
On the phone. He called. He's just a fetishist for tradition. So he just loves like this, classic show busy ritual around everything. So he called me uh in between takes. I was in this club in the middle of Queens shooting this scene with Nora. And then he was just like, well, I just want to let you know that I want you to be on cast, and this was kind of my plan all along, and I needed to make sure you weren't going to go out there and be completely, you know, out of sorts. Which I kind of like, I kind of can appreciate,
Yeah,
that
sure.
instinct was correct for him to be like, this is a guy who's going to be scrutinized and looked at very closely,
Right.
and I need to make sure that he gets how the sausage gets made,
And he's ready. He wanted you to
and
be
so that he's
ready.
ready.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
I think that's smart.
I feel like I lucked out in a lot of ways where that first season, my first season there as a cast member, I understood how to produce in a way where I was just like, okay, I wrote this sketch and it got picked to go to the show. So I'll just text the wardrobe person myself
Yeah.
and be like, hey, can I wear this and this and this? Where normally like that would be someone else's job to reach out to the departments and be like, hey, can this be the look, or can this be the set, or can this be the whatever, and the
Right.
hair? I sort of already had the basic language and the basic tools to be like, I know I can visualize what this is. I think I know what I want
Right.
to accomplish in these sketches.
Right. Right.
So I wouldn't have had that if I didn't work there for a season.
No, and I think Lauren, I mean, look, he's brilliant and he's this successful for a reason, right? But I think he obviously knew that there was going to be tremendous pressure on
I
you.
think so. I think so. Yeah.
So did you feel tremendous pressure that first season?
A little bit. And this is where we can get real. The only time I really felt pressure was with the Andrew Yang impressions, because I feel like I'm not an impressionist. I don't think I did a good impression. I've been very public about saying that I did a terrible Andrew Yang, but then he's reached out and been like, don't worry about it. Like, I really enjoy it. Like, but the Yang Gang is like really vocal and passionate,
Oh,
and
they're
it's
hardcore.
they're hardcore. It's
Yeah.
great to see, and it's like, I'm like, oh, enthusiasm around an Asian presidential candidate. Like, let's just like, absolute value of that is great.
Yeah.
But I mean, I would do like these kind of. I was just kind of trying it out. Like and he's such a compelling person, but I was just like, I don't know what the entry point is into these impressions.
Yeah.
And I'm better at writing original characters.
Right.
And so, that was a moment where I felt pressure from not only the Asian community, but from this like political unit of people being like, you are conspiring with MSNBC to like not give him airtime or whatever. It was just like,
Oh no.
it was a perfect intersection of things where, Andrew Yang wasn't getting a lot of time on the debate stage. And
Yeah,
so
that's
that
true.
translated to me not getting a lot of time in those sketches. And I was sharing a stage with like Larry David and, Maya Rudolph and like Woody Harrelson and Kate McKinnon. And like, of course they're not going to cut to me for very long. And so it was a learning experience, and it was a thing that I had a very averse reaction to at first, where I was like, they're going crazy. Like these people who are sort of like saying that I'm terrible. I'm like, wait, like there's so much else that goes into this that people aren't understanding.
Oh wow.
But it's sort of like I've sort of settled into it, where I'm just like, no, of course, like I was coming in very new, doing something that I wasn't familiar with, that I hope to get better at.
Right.
But it just like the timing was just very peculiar, where I was like, ooh, I didn't really meet the occasion to like help lampoon in a fun, sensible way this like really exciting candidate. I don't know.
So are you the type of person that like replays something, you can't let it go, and you'll just be like, oh, obsessing about it?
Absolutely.
Because I can tell, because I'm like that too.
Yeah.
Do you know that, Bowen, I still think of mistakes I made on the air like 20 years ago.
And why do you think that is? Is it because it's been seen by so many people, or like what is the root of that?
I think there's a couple of things. I think one is that like one occasion I said the word like completely wrong on the air, and I said it
Sure,
several
sure.
times. And I think when I think about it, I think about that moment and I'm like, God, you are so stupid. Like I'm really self-critical. And when I think
Sure.
of that moment, it takes me right back. And I'm like,
Oh
oh my,
yeah.
and I'm completely full of embarrassment. It's weird. Yeah,
It's a sense memory thing, and then you
it's
feel
totally.
sensorially you feel
For
embarrassed.
sure. Like I can think
Yeah.
of it right
Yeah.
now, and I'm like, oh my god, I feel embarrassed.
Oh
Yeah,
yeah. I mean,
it's
it's
weird.
pure deep cringe. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
Okay. So
awful.
you're super self critical. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I am. I'm trying to be better at it. I'm trying to be kinder to myself. I'm self-critical because, and I don't know if I don't know if you relate to this. I'm self-critical because I prepare. I try so hard to prepare.
Yeah.
And the fact that I can still fail in the face of preparation
Yeah.
is what's terrifying and embarrassing. I'm like, oh, you had an insurance policy to not fail, and yet you still failed.
It's hard though, being in a business that's so public, right?
Yeah.
I mean, because you're supposed to be entertaining the public, and I'm
Hmm.
supposed to
Hmm.
be informing the public, and so the scrutiny is higher clearly because of what we do.
Right.
And
Right.
that's hard because look, I have a pretty thick skin now after doing this for a long time, but I'm still
Yeah.
human.
Of course.
So, if I do get a critical comment that's, a little bit more cutting, then I'm still going to feel it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But I'm trying to like figure out like what's unresolved in like my past life or whatever to like that has allowed for this kind of reaction
Mm,
for my reaction to be so like pronounced and so like why am I still obsessing over even the comments? Why am I still obsessing over the fact that these like Yang Gang people who are like otherwise like great, lovely, supporting people. Like, why am I letting their criticism get to me
right.
on a deeper level than anyone else's? You know?
I mean, okay, I'm going to do some self therapy on the spot because
Come on.
I've done a lot of self assessing about this. For me, I know part of it is my upbringing. It has to
Yeah.
do with the fact that I was always pressured to do more, be better. It's not good enough. You
Right.
can do better. And
Yeah.
so that's kind of like the typical Asian thing where it's just like just pushing, pushing, pushing my parents.
Yeah.
And my mom, my mom is my biggest fan and she's going to be listening to this. So mom, you know the truth.
Hi, mom.
She's a tiger mom.
Yeah. Yeah.
She pushed me hard on all things,
Uh-huh.
and it never was good enough. There could be more, it could be better,
Right.
And I
Right.
think that programming also made me more critical about
Of
myself,
course.
more judgmental about myself. So I know that's where it comes from for me, even to this day.
Hmm.
I've mellowed clearly, but it's still there, still there.
Has your mom mellowed? Because I've found that my mom has sort of kind of pulled back a little bit. And lately, her whole theme, the thing that she's trying to impart on me now is don't be so hard on yourself. But I'm like, this is a total 180 from like when we were growing up.
Wow. Well,
Yeah.
you know what? That is interesting. Actually, Bowen, yes, she has in some ways because when she sees that I'm working too hard and I'm tired, she'll
Yeah.
be like, "Don't work so hard." And she would have never said that before,
Right.
So that is,
Exactly.
yeah, you're right. You're right. I think they do see that we've gotten to a point in our lives. I mean, I'm a lot older than you, but they see that, we are doing our best and we have
Right.
succeeded in our fields. And so
Right.
there is a level of obviously satisfaction. Are your parents okay? You said that your dad's not really into media and like he kind of,
Uh-huh.
sort of is
Uh-huh.
narrowly focused. But do they overall get your success and are they proud?
I think so. And but it's interesting because I was like booking like, these sundry jobs here and there, like TV stuff and writing stuff, in the years leading up to like 2018 to when I booked Nora.
Yeah.
But even when I booked Nora, they were like, okay, cool, cool, cool. All right, he can pay his rent. Great. But but they didn't really let it click until one day when I did this thing on like the Tonight Show with my friend, my comedic partner, Matt
Yeah.
Rogers. We did this quick segment on the Tonight Show. And the next day my mom went into work and then all of her coworkers were like, oh my God, Bowen was on TV last night. You must be so proud. And she was like, oh, yeah, I guess. And like, it must be like a mirroring thing or something. Cause it took other people to be like, Bowen's doing well for himself, for it to sort of click in.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, and then when I got hired to write for SNL, my dad was like, does this mean you have to move to LA now? You have to go to Hollywood or something? Like, he didn't realize that the show is in New York. And
Right.
And like, I mean, but I think that's ultimately a healthy thing for me to have my parents be somewhat disconnected from like the gravitas of the industry and the business being like, oh, well, it's okay, cool. Because, Hong Chow did this interview recently where she kind of was talking about how representation is huge and it's this kind of big sort of idea we're thinking about as Asian people, but it's kind of a bourgeois problem where the working class Asian person who like works at a nail salon or works these working class jobs doesn't give a shit like who's on TV. I mean, kind of, like
It's,
in some way.
I think you're right, especially because Asian immigrants are still depending on which ethnic group you're talking about, are still new, right?
Yeah.
They're fairly new compared to others, and so they're focused on making a living and feeding their families and getting their kids educated and all of that. So fame, celebrity, all this stuff, not priority. It's not a priority.
Not a priority.
No.
Because I mean, yeah, Asian people have the largest like ethnic wage gap or racial wage gap.
Yes.
So they're just having that context there, I think, has been helpful for me, at least, where I'm just like, oh, I can't really get too caught up in the sort of like pomp and circumstance of like being in the biz or like my place in the business being so like that really that important.
Which is why you are so cool, because you are still humble and you still are yourself. I mean, there's no air about you. There's no pretense. And
can you tell from Skype alone?
Well, I don't know. Maybe I would have to spend a day with you in person.
Yes.
But going back to the parent thing, I think that's a really, really good point. Really good observation, because with Asian parents, most of our Asian parents are immigrants. They did struggle, right?
Yeah.
My parents totally struggled. They went through numerous wars in Korea and Japanese occupation and, all sorts of shit. And they survived. And your parents too. Your father, went through the Cultural Revolution and tried to educate himself. So these are things that make our experience very different. And I think we have a level of appreciation for their sacrifice that perhaps the average American might not.
Sure. And I've also really been thinking about this idea that Kimberly Crenshaw, she's this like, I think she's like a legal scholar or she's a professor. She's the person who coined the term intersectionality.
Oh, okay.
And she makes a point that any person who's attained success has to acknowledge the greater structures and institutions that have helped them reach that success, or even just people who have helped them reach that success, because then you're avoiding this like resiliency or exceptionalism narrative where you're like, I really like rose above and I did something that no one else thought to do.
Right.
And that's where I am at the place I'm at, because then it also sort of plays into this like bootstrap theory of like, well, if you just looked around you and had the motivation to get out of the circumstance you're in, then you'd be where you wanted to be. Like that is like a trap that I think I've fallen into in the past, where I'm like, I'm the shit because I've done these things.
Right.
And kind of completely not accounting for the things that have gotten me to this place.
Right. Yeah. A person who does that is the person who's actually sitting in the White House right now.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
I mean, he's textbook. Like, he thinks he's done everything on his own. He's the greatest ever known to man in the universe. Didn't get any help.
I think it's a direct quote. I think you're directly quoting him.
I think it was a direct quote from his speech.
Yeah.
But anyway, we won't get into that, but I think we both probably feel the same way about him.
Absolutely.
What's happening. So
you think he's attractive? That's the same page we're on. We both think he's super hot. Hottie.
dream man. Yes, I'm not
Dream man.
married. So, if he dumps Melania, I'm next in line. I'm telling
Well,
you.
I think you and I go in on a common law throuple marriage. I think that's what we do.
Oh my God. All right. So, Bowen, so you are going to be doing season 2 of Nora, right?
Yeah.
Because it was picked up for a second season, thank God.
Yeah.
And then obviously SNL is picking up when? When do you guys go back?
Where the goal is to be back in the studio. We don't know yet. They're still figuring out dates, and I know it's like down to the wire, but
Yeah.
we'll see. Hopefully
Okay.
soon.
Okay. And then you're still doing your podcast, La Culturistas, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what else are you, I mean, is there any more room for you to work on stuff, or is your plate pretty full?
I think so. I mean, like honestly, the summer has been sparse,
Yeah.
and
Well, yeah, for all of us. Yes.
so it's gotten me to focus on these long-term projects I want to invest time in. I was supposed to shoot this thing with another Asian comedian, actor, writer, Joel Kim Booster. A lovely guy. You should have him on. He'd be a
Okay.
great guest. Very smart, very very enthusiastic, very charismatic, very funny. But he wrote this sort of film script basically that is Pride and Prejudice but modernized,
Oh,
and it takes place on Fire Island, and it's through sort of the lens of these. He's sort of the Elizabeth Bennet. I'm the Jane Bennet, but we're these two best friends who go to Fire Island together and kind of like see sort of the stratification of that place for what it is, which is like white gaze, white muscle gaze at the top of the ladder,
right, right.
Asian femme gaze at the bottom, that kind of
Oh,
thing. And
huh.
so it was a really
Oh,
great
that's
script, and
interesting.
yeah, and
Yeah.
we were supposed to shoot that this summer, but that got pushed back.
Okay.
So that was going to be a thing that I was going to try and that was going to be another plate I was going to try and spin, but I was
Right.
excited to.
Yeah.
Um, and then
But see,
just working on
that's how much things have changed, where
right.
we're seeing that kind of real representation now on several fronts.
Oh yeah.
And there's an acceptance now and an openness
Well,
to that.
yeah.
Yeah.
There's like a plurality, I think, that's of stuff that's happening. I think what has been very felicitous in all of this is that we've sort of opened the door to have a bunch of different things be represented at the same time.
Yeah.
Because I used to, I mean, and this is another sort of point of realness. I used to kind of get concerned about, this thing of like, oh, am I like, am I emasculating Asian malehood or whatever? Am I like doing too much of this, doing too much of that? But I'm like, but wait a minute, like, for every me there's like a Henry Golding, there's a John Cho, there's like, there's a Daniel Day Kim,
Yeah.
who've sort of like groomed the path for like this other lane that's not even mine. Like I don't really want to be like, the heartthrob, like Asian male lead, like I don't think
You
that's like,
could be Bowen.
I think, after some like jaw surgery, sure. Yeah.
Yeah, you got to go to Korea for that. So
Yes. But I'm just like, oh, but wait, like this is kind of the beauty of, I think, our representation moment is that there's a multitude of things being represented. You have, you just have all of these things happening in different lanes of media that I think are all kind of rising on the same tide.
Yeah, definitely.
So, yeah.
And being looked upon as just members of society rather than just, oh,
Yeah.
you're the Chinese person and you're the,
Totally.
laundromat owner and, this is what
Yeah.
this is the role you're going to play. And so it's great to see that. And I was worried that when xenophobia because of COVID was rising and there was all this
Mhm.
anti-Asian sentiment, I was afraid that was going to take us backwards. Especially in the media, because before COVID, remember, we were on a roll, right? Everything was
Right.
winning awards and like all these shows and Netflix and all this stuff. So I was afraid, is Hollywood going to get spooked by
Mhm.
this, and are they going to retract? But I've heard the good news is that I've heard from a lot of people that know they're still
Yeah.
green lighting projects and they're still moving forward on that front.
Yep.
Yeah.
I had that same fear too, and I
Did
kind of
you?
was too afraid to say it.
Okay. Yeah.
I had only had that internal fear where I was just like, what is this like? How far how far back will this go socially?
Yeah.
Um, so
Yeah.
yeah, but I'm encouraged by that too, and yeah, working on these really cool things that are like aggressively, I not even aggressive. That's not the right word, but are like celebratorily Asian.
Yeah. Right.
Um, so yeah, I mean
Oh,
that's like
wow.
the sort of glimmer of hope that I'm carrying through.
I think that's fantastic. Oh my God, Bowen. Like I said at the very beginning of this interview, I'm so proud of you
Thank you.
because, you're being so bold in who you are and unafraid. And, my favorite word is being authentic, truly
Yeah,
authentic. And I wish more people would live this way. And I know, fear is what prevents people from doing it. But, we have to live a life of fearlessness if we can,
yeah,
especially now when there's so much disinformation, misinformation, and outright lies going on. So all the more reason for us to be, more open and honest with each other.
yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you. That means a lot, May. I mean, I feel like you embody that, and that's kind of what drew me to you. And I think I mean, you are putting this, like anger and I mean, you're putting all of this like these emotions into action and into communicating. And I think like, I
Yeah.
mean, that's what kind of like has built your audience, and it's great. And like, I'm very proud to be among the throng of people who are just kind of really
Oh,
appreciating what you do. So it means a lot.
well, thank you. Thank you. No, I appreciate hearing that. And that's what keeps me going. So, and I just love the fact that, yes, you're right. You did blow me off for a couple of days when I first reached out to you. But then when you did, you were so apologetic and you were so generous. You're like, oh my God, I absolutely would love to come on the show. And I'm so glad that you did.
I'm
This,
very glad too.
this was a great conversation in terms of this is what I love doing with people. I want to surprise listeners and viewers and show a different side to somebody that they might think, oh, Bowen, he's just a comedian, I mean,
Uh-huh.
but there's such depth, in what we talk about. And this is the beauty of this kind of conversation.
For
So
sure.
thank you for being so open on that front as well.
Thanks, May.
All right. Well, listen, you take care and good luck with everything. And I so look forward to watching everything that you're going to be putting out soon. I hope you guys go back into production soon.
Yeah, me
Yeah.
too. And I'll be on the other side, just kind of watching you from afar. So this is very
Oh,
cool.
thank you. Well, hopefully
Yeah.
we'll see each other soon, when things are a little safer. But
Yeah.
until then, please stay safe and take
Yes.
care.
You too.
Okay. I love him. He's such a sweetheart. And I was just so happy to speak with him on so many different levels. So I hope you guys enjoyed it too. And like he was saying, SNL is going to go back into production very soon, so we'll look out for that. And Nora from Queens, love that show. If you guys haven't seen that show, you really must. It is hilarious. And so let's see how his career progresses. But I think Bowen he's on fire, and he's, like I said in the beginning of the show, he's just getting going. So proud of him, and such a humble, sweet, just authentic guy. So all the best of luck to him. But I don't think he's going to need it. I think he's doing well. So Bowen, love you. Thank you so much for coming on the show, and thank you guys for listening and watching. And please, if you haven't subscribed to the May Lee Show on YouTube, go do so. It really helps when we see more subscribers joining. And also, if you haven't followed us on Instagram or Twitter or Facebook, do so as well. It always helps to get those numbers up and show that we have those followers. And I want to be able to get stuff out to you guys that you want to hear and see. So always great to hear from you. Always great to see the support. Always great to read the comments. So keep them coming. All right. Okay. Until next time, everyone stay safe and stay healthy and stay strong, right? As a community, we're only getting stronger. All right. See you guys.